The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority, they disrespect their elders, and they love chatter in place of exercise. I know what you're thinking. Kids these days. Yeah, they're all about that. They don't respect their elders. They don't respect their authority. You know who said that quote? Socrates. In the year approximately 430 BC. What does this tell us? This tells us that from the beginning of time, we have had trouble talking between the generations. And in order for us to keep this employee engagement, when we have 4 generations working in the workplace at the same time, we need to figure out how we're wired so that we can better communicate with each other. So I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version in The World According to Lisa Ryan about the 4 generations so that you can see where you're at and get some tips as far as how we can learn about ourselves, as well as how we can communicate with others who may be wired differently because of the year that they were born. So let's start first with the traditionalists. Traditionalists, they were born before 1945. Here's a group of people that had one job their entire life. They started in the mailroom and they climbed up the corporate ladder. And then after 30 years, they retired, they got the gold watch, they got the pension. Cool, we're gone. So the boomers came in, 1946 to 1964. The boomers saw what their parents had, what those traditionalists had after working so hard for so long, and they said, I want me some of that, but I want it more quickly. So I'm going to do this through FaceTime. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show up way before my boss gets there in the morning. I'm going to work way until my boss leaves because it's all about FaceTime. As a matter of fact, I am going to be proud of working 40, 60, 80, 120 hours a week. I am going to destroy my marriage in the process. Yeah, because it's all about the office. This is when we started seeing the statistics as far as 50% of all marriages end in divorce. Yep. That's because the boomers were giving all of their time to corporate America. And then what happened in their 40s and 50s? Corporate America kind of said, we don't really need you anymore. We're going to find people who are younger and cheaper than you. And the boomers found themselves out on the street. They gave birth to the Gen X came in, 1965 to 1980, the shortest and the smallest of all the generations. Why? Well, because the boomers were way too busy working to actually reproduce. So Gen X came into the workplace and they had seen what corporate America did to their parents and they said, I don't want me none of that. So they said, you know what, I'm going to do my job and then I'm going to work on this thing called work-life balance. I'm going to focus on the areas of my life that are important to me. And then we have the millennials. And the millennials is a group that now that everybody is complaining about. The really cool thing for you millennials, though, is that you'll be able to complain about the next generation, because that's what we do. But let's take a look at the millennials. First of all, this is a group that has grown up their entire life with being acknowledged for everything they did. If you were a boomer, it was first, second, or third place. If you came in fourth, you were nothing. Millennials, we didn't want to keep score. Everybody wins. Let's give you a participation ribbon. They've been acknowledged their entire life. This is also the generation that has not known recycling. They want to contribute to make the world a better place. They look at the larger vision. They're technically savvy. They were digital natives. I know when I was growing up, if I needed my VCR timed, basically I would have the local 12-year-old do it. But I know, you all can take your smartphone, hand it to a 3-year-old, and that 3-year-old will give you any app that you want because they're wired that way. Okay? And when this millennial comes up to you and interviews for a job and they want to start out with that $75,000 starting salary, it's not that they actually believe that they've earned it, but what they're looking at is more student loan debt than any other generation before them. And they're thinking, how am I going to pay off this $150,000 in student loans and move out of my parents' basement before I'm 40? So when we start to think about the way that we're wired and how we communicate and the judgments that we make about each other based on the year that they were born in, we can start to communicate. So here's some tips for you. If you are a traditionalist, start acknowledging your staff. I know that you might be saying, why should I thank them for doing their job? I mean, isn't that what a paycheck's for? Yes, it is. And what happens when that's your mentality is you are paying your employees just enough so they don't quit, and they are doing exactly enough effort so that they don't get fired. If you want your employees to give you their blood, their sweat, their tears, what you're doing is you're acknowledging them for the work that they do. If you're dealing with traditionalists, understand that that employee engagement is not something that they really understand because they weren't raised that way. And cut them some slack. Also, we're losing a lot of the history of our companies unless we start to talk to this generation and find out their foundation, their knowledge, their expertise, so we can find out where our organizations began. If you are a boomer, realize that just because you live to work, your coworkers probably don't. So when they actually want to go home at 5, that's not working a half day, okay? Boomers, start to learn technology, because if you don't, you are making yourself unemployable. It's time to take the chance to figure out something that maybe you're not wired for, but you can learn. And if you're dealing with boomers, understand that their whole life has been focused around that corporate ladder. And they've gone through a lot of changes in that time, and they don't really comprehend this whole work-life balance because they've given so much of their heart and soul to that company. If you are a Gen X, realize that people want your technical expertise and they want to connect with you. And sometimes when you want nothing to do with them, you might be hurting and not allowing relationships to form. Boomers want to connect with you. Millennials want to connect with you. You are the bridge between those two generations. And if you're dealing with a Gen X, realize that that is something that they have different priorities. So we want to make sure that we encourage family activities, that we get them involved and treat them as more of just the big bad corporation. If you are a millennial, realize that climbing the corporate ladder takes more than a day, okay? It's in putting yourself out there to learn and grow and experience and see, have as many experiences you want and as you like. Find out the other things that you can do and try to connect with people. Yes, it is a lot easier for you to go up and go like this and be done instead of taking 10 minutes and showing that boomer who may not understand that technology exactly what to do. Spend the 10 minutes. Show them, connect with them so that they understand that technology and you create a bond with them. Also, if you are dealing with millennials, give them a chance. They see things in your organization that you may not, because their brains are wired differently. Allow them to be creative. Look for opportunities to go above and beyond and give back to create a mission that's greater than just your organization by itself. Because of our greater lifespans, we have 4 generations in the workplace right now. And when we can figure out and create those conversations with people, we can learn from them. Just like in the immortal words of Rodney King, why can't we all just get along? Because you know what? If you take the time to study the generations, we can. So how does all this work in the corporate environment?